just normal talking. Ew. Okay. Dr. Bob.
Captain and the second mate are too stunned to speak.
Jesus.
The deckhand hasn't just gone insane. He's become unrecognizable. Something is burrowing out from his eye socket. Teeth. A cluster of teeth that are growing without stopping.
Not the teeth
winding
again.
out of the space where his eyes should be, like weeds. To their horror, the deckhand reaches into the socket and wrenches out one of the teeth,
He just
putting
takes
it in
them
his
out.
mouth and chewing it. As his head turns, they catch a glimpse of the
Ew.
side of his head, lined with more of the crooked, yellow teeth growing out of his skull. Their roots no doubt burrowing into his brain.
What the
It
fuck? It looks so wrong. What the
A glimpse of the
fuck?
side of his head.
Ew! What is that? My eyes, bro. Teeth barnacles. Ugh. He's got like skin flakes coming. Bro needs some head and shoulders.
Lined with more of the crooked, yellow teeth growing out of his skull. Their roots no doubt burrowing into his brain. It looks more like the barnacles on the bottom of the ship than the
Yeah,
side
bro
of a
has
human head.
dandruff.
The captain knows there's only one thing to do. Their cargo needs to go overboard. She's the one doing this. On October 19th, 1985, the cargo ship, the SS Mavis, would be sailing en route to the United Kingdom. Within a week, the vessel would be found by SCP Foundation agents. It was shipwrecked off the east coast of England with no sign of any of the crew, or, more importantly, their cargo. SCP-4667.
It spreads.
This anomaly has somehow managed to evade Foundation capture in the almost 4 decades since, although what they would uncover from the wreckage of the Mavis would uncover more about this elusive entity. The SS Mavis had been on a course from a port in Russia to the United Kingdom, carrying a number of individuals from Irkutsk within the USSR. Research and evidence gathered by the Foundation indicates that one of these individuals was Yosif Yekaterina, a local dentist from the area.
Bless you.
The other was a mute woman, 26 years of age, referred to only as Eva Dente, in partial records recovered from the Mavis. Her surname remains unknown and is believed to have been lost.
No
While at the
fucking
time of
way,
the shipwreck's
bro.
discovery, the Foundation assumed that this was a case of 2 Soviet defectors fleeing from the USSR during the Cold War, smuggled aboard the cargo ship. It was quickly determined that these 2 individuals were far from ordinary civilians. Yosif Yekaterina had departed Russia after contacting a colleague of his in Britain, discussing an unusual discovery he had made regarding one of his patients. This patient was Eva Dente, prompting Yekaterina to bring the girl with him aboard the Mavis to visit his associate in the UK, one Russ Stanford, a man known to the SCP Foundation. At the time, Russ Stanford had garnered some attention from the Foundation given his role as the leader of a smaller-scale group of interest, designated as GOI 0435, the Dentists Collective of Britain. While they were hardly considered as great of a security risk as the likes of the Chaos Insurgency or GRU Division P, the Dentists Collective noted study of anomalies had become more prevalent under Russ Stanford's leadership, prompting the Foundation to keep watch of their activities. They had started simply as a workers' union for dentists, but for some unknown reason, the
Speaking
Dentists
of
Collective
union,
of Britain
we live in a
pivoted under
simulation,
Stanford
chat.
towards studying anomalous practices of dentistry and genetic dental disorders that were also anomalous in nature. Hence, Russ Stanford's apparent interest
They
in
knew.
Eva Dente. In addition to being mute, the Soviet woman had been diagnosed with total anodontia, a genetic disorder that causes a complete lack of teeth. But there was something else about her condition that had prompted Yekaterina to contact Stanford. The Foundation has since determined that Eva Dente is SCP-4667. Upon hearing about the anomalous dental condition of Yekaterina's patient, Stanford was eager to examine her for himself. He requested that she be relocated to his office in the UK and corresponded with Yekaterina directly in order to arrange for both him and Eva Dente to be smuggled out of the USSR. They procured the SS Mavis, a British-owned cargo-hauling vessel, to transport the dentist and his anomalous patient by bribing the crew on board. It was also agreed that, in exchange for safe passage to the UK, Yekaterina would offer his services as the ship doctor, should the need arise. With the cargo ship workers agreeing to smuggle the 2 supposed defectors, the Mavis set sail, with Eva Dente locked in a small room to the side of the vessel's cargo hold. By the time the ship washed up on the shores of the United Kingdom, both Yekaterina and SCP-4667 would have vanished. The rest of the crew weren't so lucky. Aboard the SS Mavis were Captain Boleslav Kondrat, the chief mate Carlton Tilda, the ship's chief engineer Kenelm Hiram, Wilhelm Kale, the second mate, and deckhand Sebastian Wendell. During the initial transit from the USSR to the UK, Wendell was keeping an eye on Evidente in her room. He and Kale discussed her activity, noting that she seemed to be pacing around inside. Neither had been told why she was being held in the cargo hold room. They had only heard from Yekaterina that she was mute and lacked any teeth. Beyond that, they weren't given a reason from their captain as to why she was aboard. Having been standing watch for a while at this point, Wendell asked Kale to fetch him a chair, only to start coughing lightly as his crewmate departed. He tried striking up conversation with Evidente, asking if she needed anything, even offering her some leftovers from the previous night's supper.
Ew!
Suddenly, Wendell found his cough becoming more violent and raised a hand to cover his mouth. He felt something solid hit the center of his palm, caught it reflexively, only to feel sick to his stomach the second he opened his fingers to see it. It was a human tooth, an abnormally elongated human tooth. Looking through the window into the room where Evidente was, Wendell thanked her, then casually put the tooth back in his mouth, loudly crunching it before eventually swallowing it. Despite telling the anomalous dental patient that he was good for now, he quickly coughed up another unusually long tooth. Well, if you insist. Elsewhere on the ship, over at the bridge, Captain Kondrat had been manning the wheel and steering the Mavis, while absent-mindedly humming to himself.
Oopsie.
As he consulted one of his maps,
Oh, well,
he
I
suddenly
guess,
started to
if you
experience a cramp
insist.
in his hand, assuming it to be a flare-up of his carpal tunnel syndrome. To his shock, though, as he reached to pick up a pencil, a soft crack caused him to jolt his hand backwards. Somehow, the fingernail on his left index finger had cracked and was bulging outwards.
Ew.
At that moment, his chief mate Tilda entered the bridge in time to man the helm while the captain left to speak with their impromptu doctor, Yekaterina, about his unusual injury. Finding Captain Kondrat entering his quarters, Yekaterina turned away from writing in his journal and asked if everything was all right with his patient. Kondrat assured the dentist that the deckhand Wendell was keeping a close eye on her before he presented his damaged fingernail to Yekaterina. Being the closest thing to the ship's doctor on board, Yekaterina retrieved a pair of pliers from his bag and started to remove splinters of Kondrat's fingernail. The captain winced, keeping his hand pressed flat on the nightstand, wondering if it wouldn't be less hassle to just chop the whole finger off. But the more fragments Yekaterina chipped away revealed something underneath the man's fingernail. Another long, human tooth.
Ew.
Yekaterina urged the confused Kondrat to keep still while he started pulling the tooth out of his finger. The captain howled obscenities as pain ran down his hand until the tooth cracked out of his finger, which then started to bleed heavily. Yekaterina calmly placed the tooth on the nightstand and retrieved something to sterilize the wound and bandages to cover it. Gagging, barely able to get words out, Kondrat asked what could possibly cause a growth like that to appear. The dentist's answer was as simple as it was telling. "Girl is losing control." He explained as best as he could that he'd cared for Evidente for some time, and she had what he considered to be a gift. Yekaterina was certain that she was in control of this anomalous ability, but it seemed that was no longer the case. As he casually produced a measuring tape from his satchel and measured the tooth, Captain Kondrat pressed him for more information, only to be interrupted by Hiram, the chief engineer. He had come to warn the captain that the Mavis was going too fast and that the engine would give out if they kept on at their current speed. Frustrated, Kondrat chalked it up to Tilda, expecting that the chief mate was slacking. He told Hiram to get Tilda out of his smoke break and back to the ship's wheel. Returning to his conversation with Yekaterina, Captain Kondrat demanded to know more about what Evidente was doing to him. The dentist explained that he wasn't entirely sure, but that his colleague at the Dentists Collective of Britain, Russ Stanford, knew more. All Yekaterina really understood was that Evidente could cause teeth to grow. Beyond that, little else. He didn't even have a name for the anomalous condition. The tooth he'd pulled from Kondrat's finger was 32 millimeters long, 10 millimeters longer
That's a
than the
long
average
fucking
incisor,
tooth.
and it was still growing. While Kondrat
It
departed
was
Yekaterina's
still
quarters
growing.
over at the helm of the ship, Tilda hadn't stepped
What
away
if
from the
I
wheel
make
at
that
all.
so?
He just couldn't move.
The
Following the
suspense, it was
captain's orders,
still
Hiram headed over to
growing
the
and then
bridge
just
to get the chief mate to slow the cargo vessel down.
just grows a half
only
an
to
inch.
freeze on the spot the moment he saw Tilda. He backed away, horrified, only to start feeling lightheaded. With a heavy thump, Hiram dropped to the floor, fainted.
Is he
Tilda
just
wasn't
tooth pile?
moving. He couldn't move. His body was covered in copious amounts of the same elongated teeth, growing out of his arms, legs, hands, splitting through fingernails,
No!
and breaking the...
Is my food already here? It's been 10 minutes. There's no way my food's here, right? Wait, I'll be right back. Well, shit, my food's already here. That was fast. That was so quick. How the
the
fuck?
skin of his knuckles as more of them came bursting
Why was
out.
speed running it?
The teeth surrounded his entire body and had intertwined with the ship's controls, causing the Mavis's gradual acceleration. While Hiram lay unconscious on the floor, there then came the sound of cracking. A puddle
Will
of
you wanna
blood
watch
started
this
to
while
form.
eating? Maybe too much information, but I used to watch crime cleanup videos on YouTube, and half the time they will clean up like tons and tons of human feces and blood and hair and other bloody skin, hairy pieces while eating. I'm immune. I don't know, man. I'm built diffy. Oh, wrong button.
Underneath him.
I'm built diffy, bro.
Back in the cargo hold, something equally strange
I don't
was
care.
happening to Wendell. He was chewing, but no crunching
Not used
could be
my
heard.
breakfast TV for
His
weeks.
voice was noticeably slurred as he asked Evidente
Watched
if she had
every
any more
episode.
for him. When Kale returned with a chair,
That was
Wendell turned
nasty.
to him
Nothing was
and
censored.
asked if he had any teeth to spare. Before the terrified Kale could properly process what he was seeing, Wendell reached into his eye socket with 2 of his fingers and pulled out another elongated tooth. Before he put it in his
Ew.
mouth and started chewing. Conrad entered just in time to see
Why,
this
why does he
unfold.
just
The
keep
captain and his
eating
second
them?
mate baffled
Everyone
and
else is just
horrified by
scared.
what
He
was
just
going
keeps
on.
eating them.
Wendell jeered that eating his own teeth was better than Kale's cooking, before insisting he was still watching their anomalous cargo. Captain Conrad explained as best he could that Evidente was somehow messing with Wendell, and that he wasn't supposed to have teeth growing out of his eyes. Without warning, Wendell collapsed, gripping his gut in agony. The tooth fragments in his stomach were still growing and had elongated so much that they were able to puncture through his abdomen. They didn't stop, small enamel spikes tearing through his shirt, while Kale, on Conrad's order, grabbed the ship's keys from Wendell. The captain declared he wanted to throw Evidente overboard. Kale brought the keys up to the door, only for another tooth to suddenly grow out of the tip of his index finger. It pierced right through his thumb, causing him to drop the keys in pain. As they clattered to the floor, Evidente reached under the door and grabbed them. But as Conrad was quick to taunt
She's
her,
like a
she
fucking
couldn't
demon,
unlock the
bro.
door from inside the room. Within the cargo hold side room, Evidente threw the keys in frustration. She stared at the sealed door, and as she did, screams could be heard from the other side. Kondrat and Kale were themselves becoming masses of elongated teeth, screaming in agony before going silent after a few short seconds. Above her, Evidente noticed the ceiling was convex and stepped into the corner of the room, out from underneath the bulge. The ceiling above her started to crack under the strain of something above,
More
only
teeth.
to break and allow a mass of teeth to fall through the resultant hole.
No way.
It was, or it had been, Hiram's body, now riddled with more of the elongated
Those are
teeth
some
growing
heavy
from his
teeth,
back and
bro.
shoulders. The roof above the side room collapsed, allowing Evidente to escape. A rising pillar
That's
of
a lot of
growing
calcium.
teeth carried her up through the hole in the ceiling, up to the Mavis's bridge. Stepping off the platform she had
Teeth
grown out of
elevator.
Hiram, Evidente was at the ship's helm. Low fuel lights were blinking as the calcified statue of Tilda's body was stuck at the ship's wheel. Calmly and silently, Evidente left the bridge through a side door that took her down onto the main deck of the cargo
Teeth
ship.
bender.
There, the dentist who'd brought her aboard was readying a lifeboat. Seeing her suddenly approaching, Yekaterina wasn't at all startled. Instead, he spoke to Evidente in Russian, telling her,
You know I care about you and your craft. Unlike these others, I will await your reclamation. I hope my service was satisfactory.
After staring at him for a few moments, Evidente left to return to the bridge, leaving Yekaterina free to leave the Mavis aboard the lifeboat. When the ship would eventually wash up on the coast of the United Kingdom, there was no one still alive on board. Or rather, there wouldn't be by the time the Foundation arrived. But they weren't the one to get to the Mavis first. Having been expecting the cargo ship's arrival, members of GOI 0435, including the leader of the Dentists Collective of Britain, Russ Stanford, were quick to arrive at the site of the shipwreck.
Exactly.
It was
Makes
October
you wonder why
21st,
she can't give herself
1985.
teeth.
The arrival of the Dentists Collective
Why
was
is she
recorded by one of their
toothless?
members carrying a video camera. Stanford claimed that she had spoken to him the night before, that she
She.
wanted the group to see something. He instructed the cameraman to keep the film steady, as there'd be others who would want to see. Approaching the Mavis's wreckage, Stanford quickly recognized it as the cargo ship that Yekaterina had bribed. He called out to see if there was anyone else still alive on board. As he did, Evidente emerged on the deck
Hello.
of the Mavis. Stanford, with the majority of the rest of the group, called out to her and claimed that they had studied her craft. They called Evidente's anomalous condition her divine work, and said that they had heard her cries in the teeth of their dental patients. Not all of us forsake your gift. Not all. Evidente smirked in response, interrupting Stanford as a pair of wings began to unfurl from her
What
back.
the fuck?
They were made entirely of elongated teeth. Although the cameraman filming this
Okay.
happening couldn't get a clear enough shot of what was holding them together. Stanford and the rest of the Dentists Collective of Britain bowed towards Evidente. Their leader then addressed the anomalous winged woman.
So she
Go,
can grow
Make
teeth?
your gift clear,
Just not in her
Evidente.
mouth?
Make it clear to the overlookers.
At this point, as captured in the recording, Evidente used her teeth wings to lift herself up into the air before flying towards the mainland. Once she exited the frame of the camera lens, the members of the Dentists Collective started slowly walking in the same direction that she flew off in. The cameraman dropped his camera, seemingly not noticing, as he joined the others silently walking into the distance. The camera was still rolling when the Foundation agents arrived. on
Yeah,
the
these
scene.
biblically accurate
Multiple
inputs
objects
are
of
getting
significance
weird.
were recovered from the scene of the SS
Yeah, what a weird
Mavis
fucking
wreck,
fever
including
dream.
the bodies of its crew, a photo, and the camera, with some of its recordings still intact. The photograph, presumed to have been dropped by one of the dentists, was a black and white image of
Ow,
one
my
of their group
pizza is
meetings,
so hot,
dated
it's
several
so
years
fresh.
earlier, showing the collective's members sitting around a table. Written on the back was the phrase, "Dentists Meeting 1981. We grow stronger every day." Among the figures in the photo, Russ Stanford could be seen standing at the far side of the table. Following the recovery of the SS Mavis's shipwreck, the SCP Foundation has been unable to ascertain the whereabouts of GOI 0435. Researchers have postulated that this was more than a group of practitioners with an interest in anomalous dentistry. From the evidence gathered at the scene, they appear to have been some kind of cult of unknown origin or intentions. According to records obtained by the Foundation, not one of the group's members returned to regular practice following this event, nor have any been reported as deceased. The search for further information regarding the dentist's collective remains ongoing. SCP-4667 also still remains at large. Despite knowing of her existence, SCP-4667 has never been in Foundation custody. However, details about her anomalous condition have been ascertained from the footage recovered at the wreck of the SS Mavis, as well as the bodies of its crew. Whether possessing their deciduous milk teeth or their full-grown succedaneous adult teeth, anyone in close enough proximity to SCP-4667 will begin to grow elongated teeth throughout their body. The range of this anomalous dental transfiguration is thought to have an area of effect between approximately 70 to 100 meters. A person being affected by SCP-4667 will find their teeth start to slowly elongate vertically, growing downwards into the gum line and eventually through it. This is also known to affect other mammals, as a colony of European bats were found aboard the Mavis, having also succumbed to the effects of SCP-4667.
Not the animals!
More new teeth will begin to sporadically grow directly from the subject's skeletal system, starting at the jawbone and then downwards, with more growths beginning lower down. These newly developed teeth will also start to rapidly get longer until they are able to puncture vital organs or break through from underneath the subject's skin. This occurs at a sporadic rate, and some Foundation researchers have speculated, based on security footage recovered from aboard the Mavis, that SCP-4667 is able to at least partially control the rate at which these new teeth grow. However, until she is able to be captured, this remains unconfirmed. What is known for certain is that this anomalous overgrowth of teeth will continue even after an affected person is dead. The typical cause of death for these people is having their internal organs pierced by tooth growth. Most commonly, the roots of the teeth in the person's upper jaw elongate until they stab through the roof of the mouth and continue upwards into the brain. Perhaps strangest of all, however,
teeth
was what the
lobotomy,
Foundation
bro.
discovered had happened to the bodies of the Mavis crew after they had been killed. Cadavers of those affected by SCP-4667 are no longer in close proximity to her. The teeth growths will start collectively bending into large, intricate sculptures. The teeth growths emerging from one of the crew formed a feminine, winged humanoid, thought by some to be a depiction of Evidente herself. The bat colony affected by SCP-4667 grew to depict multiple small humanoid figures, appearing to be malnourished and in states of anguish. Out of one of the other crew members grew a tooth sculpture of the winged figure with its arms extended over multiple humanoids. From one of the other bodies, a depiction of these humanoid figures appearing joyous,
for real,
holding what looked to be food. The next of these tooth growth sculptures appear to show multiple aggressive human figures, with the winged entity flying away from them. The remaining one, noticeably larger and better constructed than the other statues, showed the same winged feminine humanoid crying. Foundation experts are still struggling to interpret the meaning of these sculptures or how exactly they are formed from a body affected by SCP-4667. Researchers are hopeful that the eventual recovery of SCP-4667 will yield some answers. She is currently thought to be located somewhere between either the North Sea
I like how there's
or the
a tooth
Sea.
fairy
Abnormal tooth growth
that
in
makes
coastal and
people
ocean
grow,
fauna is being
that
tracked
makes
in order
everything
to
grow
determine
teeth
her
by just
exact
being in a
whereabouts.
close proximity.
Check out the Dr. Bob
Up to
Patreon
2
and
meters
become a junior
long, and
researcher
people
today.
question how
Now go and watch another
she can
entry from
fly.
the files of Dr. Bob, like SCP-478, Tooth Fairies.
I don't think that's the only questionable part happening here. What the fuck is that? That's me.